The purpose of this new series, which is dubbed Debunking Turkish Irredentism, is to alert the international community and all the Hellenism living abroad to the recent actions of the Turkish government and Turk officials in general, especially after the declaration of friendship that was signed in December 2023 between the Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis and Turk President Erdogan. In this first episode, we tackled the key question of the demilitarization in the Aegean and if Greece is bound by international treaties to apply total demilitarization in all of her eastern Aegean islands. A few days before President Erdogan arrived in Greece to sign the now so-called Declaration of Athens, Turkey issued a notam, which is a notice to air missions or notice to airmen, where she demanded again the demilitarization of Greek islands. In January 2024, Turkey issued another notam in reply to Greece's proposed military training exercises in the Aegean. This game of Greek notam and Turkish anti-notam has been going on for quite some time, actually for quite some years, in the Aegean Sea. It is fairly apparent that the Declaration of Athens changed nothing as to Turkey's claims regarding the complete and total demilitarization of all Greek islands in the eastern Aegean. The new ace in Turkish sleeve, or so the Turks believe, is the so-called Decision of Six Powers from 1914, which the Turks also quoted in the 3 letters sent to the United States Secretariat, protesting that Greece is not conforming to her international treaties obligations and essentially disputing Greek sovereignty in all eastern Aegean islands, both big and small. In the past, Turkish territorial claims in the Aegean had been limited to rock formation and islets, as was evident in 1996 in the Imia-Kardak crisis. The following presentation uses historical facts and a few reports and telegrams from the Department of State and the Foreign Office, now declassified, to answer to the Turkish allegations of today regarding Greece's alleged treaty obligations for complete and total demilitarization of all Greek islands in the eastern Aegean. So, our question is Greece bound by international treaties to apply total demilitarization in all eastern Aegean islands? As I said before, Turkey is fairly often invoking the so-called Decision of Six Powers from the era of the Balkan Wars to demand from Greece the total demilitarization of all eastern Aegean islands. A common tactic for Turkey is to issue notams, such as the one issued in December 2023, where Turkey asks for the total demilitarization of the Greek islands of Psara, Samos, and Chios, where in the notam are also referred by their Turkish given names that they are actually used only by the Turks. It's not the same thing as Constantinople that everybody knows that is present-day Istanbul, for example. The terminology used is the following. Notam issued by Greek CWA constitutes a breach of Greece's treaty obligations pertaining to the demilitarized status of eastern Aegean islands, and then they quote the 1914 Six Powers Decision, the 1923 Lausanne Peace Treaty, with its annex, the Lausanne Convention relating to the regime of the Straits. And what is the Turk conclusion is that these islands and/or her territory must not be included in any scenario/concept of any military training or exercise. Turkey has issued another notam in January 2024, where they claim again that the Greek islands, Chios, Samos, Tylos, and Chalki, have a demilitarized status. Again, they use Turkish names for Greek islands, populated exclusively by Greeks for centuries, and awarded to Greece by the same international agreements mentioned in the notam. In the 2024 notam, they also refer to the 47 Paris Peace Treaty for the two Greek islands which are part of the Dodecanese, Tylos and Chalki. Here you can see the latest Turkish NOTAMs, how they quote all these peace treaties, and this is actually again an anti-NOTAM because Greece had issued a NOTAM that notified the international community that she was to start military exercises in the area. And this NOTAM had a duration from January 22 to January 30, 2024. Recent developments have been extremely alarming, as Turkey explicitly refers to the 13 February decision to link the demilitarization issue with the sovereignty of the Aegean Islands. The Turkish claims go as far as to support that the legal situation created in 1914 was never abrogated, and thus, since Greece uses some of the Aegean Islands for military purposes, they should be all handed back to Turkey. The permanent representative of Turkey to the United Nations, Mr. Sinirioğlu, has made use of this rhetoric in his 3 letters addressed to the United Nations Secretary General during 2021-2022. And Mr. Sinirioğlu said exactly that Article 12 of the 1923 Lausanne Peace Treaty confirmed, on the conditions that the islands be demilitarized, the decision of 13 February 1914 by the Conference of London, which ceded certain Aegean islands to Greece. This mistake is also in the Lausanne Treaty because actually the London Conference ended in August 11, 1913, because the head of the conference and the British Prime Minister, the British Foreign Minister Edward Grey, he just wanted to end with the conference and go for vacations because he was very tired, as the conference had essentially started in December 1912. So this is a mistake that is reproduced also here, but it's actually written, it's the exact wording of Article 12 of the Lausanne Treaty. Okay, so Mr. Sinirioğlu goes on and says that as it is apparent from the letter of the Lausanne Peace Treaty and the manner in which it confirms the Six Powers decision, Greece's sovereignty over the islands was and remains dependent upon demilitarization. And the contention that Greek sovereignty over the Eastern Aegean Islands is not linked to the maintenance or their demilitarized status is devoid of legal basis, because Article 12 of the Lausanne Peace Treaty unequivocally establishes, in part through the reference made to the 1914 decision, a clear connection between sovereignty and demilitarization for all of the Eastern Aegean Islands. This is exactly what they also quote in the recent NOTAMs. Now, according to the Turk scholar, Professor Toluner, the intention of the parties in the Lausanne Treaty was not to draw up a new territorial settlement, but to confirm a previously agreed one. So what Mrs. Toluner says essentially that Greece did not acquire the de jure possession of the islands with the Lausanne Treaty, but she acquired it after the Balkan Wars with the 1914 decision of the Six Powers. Also, Mr. Lunar says that regarding the sovereignty of Greece, again, the demilitarized status of these islands provided for in this decision was a constituent of consent on the part of Turkey to the cession of territory. What was ceded is not territory, but territory over which sovereign rights of Greece are restricted at the very moment they were established. And this happened because the great powers or Greece had to meet the security interests of Turkey. And therefore, if these conditions are not fulfilled, the islands must be returned to Turkey as the successor state to the Ottoman Empire. Now, the assertions of Professor Toluner can be easily debunked just by referring to the historical facts, and especially how the Ottoman Empire unconditionally accepted the terms of the Six Powers in April 1st, 1913. in order for the powers to mediate with the Balkan Alliance and end the First Balkan War. This is the March. The demarche was issued by the six powers in March 31, and exactly after 1 day, or maybe even the same day, the Turks accepted unconditionally all the demands of the six powers. And this happened because the Sublime Porto was in a very weak negotiating position at the time, as the Balkan Alliance army had just occupied Adrianople, the former capital of the Ottoman Empire before Constantinople, and was marching towards Constantinople. So, despite these indisputable historical facts, these theories have been fully embraced by the Erdogan government, disputing Greek sovereignty over the Aegean Islands, which is a dangerous path which can potentially create new tensions in the area. Here's a photo of President Erdogan with the blue homeland. He claims half of Aegean and then engulfs Greek islands in a potential territorial Turkish territorial sea zone. In the past, Turkey has quoted the 1914 decision to also ask for the total demilitarization of Thasos and Agios Abstratios, which, as the island of Psara, they were not mentioned or discussed in the 1922-23 Lausanne Peace Treaty Conference with regard to any restriction in their ability to be fully militarized if the Greek government decides so. In the December 2023 NOTAM, Turkish officials are confusing things by simultaneously quoting three separate international agreements. As we said, it's the 1914 six-power decision, the Lausanne Peace Treaty, and the Lausanne Annex for the Straits, the Lausanne Convention for the Regulation of the Freedom of the Straits, asking for the total demilitarization in the NOTAM of Chios, Samos, and Psara. So what I would like to point out is, first, the 1923 Lausanne Peace Treaty, Article 13, explicitly refers only to a group of 4 islands: Chios, Mytilene or Lesbos, as it's called today, Samos, and Ikaria. This is the group that at the time of the Balkan Wars, the Turks called that these are essentially islands that belong to Asia Minor, because they're very close to Asia Minor. Now, during the Lausanne Conference, it was agreed that a new form of modified demilitarization will be applied, which explicitly led Greece to maintain the right of self-defense. The modified demilitarization allows Greece, even today, to freely utilize aviation and probably radars and missiles that, of course, could not be mentioned in the document that dates 1922-23, construct air bases at the 4 islands, maintain armed forces and gendarmerie with the restrictions which are specified in Article 13. So, during the conference, the head of the Turkish delegation, Pasha İsmet İnönü, dubbed the demilitarization as almost illusory, which clearly stated that he was extremely unhappy with the decision of the powers of the Allies. And this term, that the demilitarization was illusory, depicts the true contractual obligations regarding the demilitarization of the Eastern Aegean Islands that the Allied powers decided in Lausanne and Greece accepted to uphold. Now, Turkey was the only signatory which at first did not agree with the proposed demilitarization, which was eventually included in the final draft of the Lausanne Treaty as Article 13. However, Turkey ratified the Lausanne Treaty in its entirety on July 24, 1923. And what is important to remember is that Greece was on the winning side of World War I with the Allies, Great Britain, France, the United States, and other Allied countries, whereas Turkey was on the losing side, as the Ottomans made the fatal mistake and allied with the Germans in August 1914. Now, Greece had indeed lost the war against Turkey in Asia Minor. But the important thing is that the Allies had defeated the Ottomans and even conquered the capital of Constantinople at the end of World War I in 1918. Therefore, as we can see from the proceedings, any Turkish proposals in the Lausanne Treaty during the Lausanne Conference for total demilitarization of the Eastern Aegean Islands were rejected by the Allies. So this is the reason why today Greece's contractual obligations from Lausanne Treaty are extremely, let's call them light, regarding restrictions of demilitarization. Here is a nice picture of a contingent of British troops that occupied Constantinople in January 1919. Behind you can also notice the Greek flags in the city. Now, let's go to the Straits questions, the Straits. And the 1923 Convention relating to the regime of the Straits has absolutely nothing to do with Chios, Samos, and Psara, because these islands are very far from the Straits. The Turks are invoking a completely irrelevant international agreement in their December 23 note. Article 4 of the 1923 Lausanne Convention asked for the demilitarization of both shores of the Straits of the Dardanelles and the Bosporus, and also in the Aegean Sea, the islands of Samothrace and Limnos, which are Greek, and the islands of Imbros and Tenedos, which also were Greek, but after the Lausanne Treaty, they were transferred into Turkish sovereignty. And these four islands, among also with the Rabbit Islands, had to be demilitarized due to their proximity with the Turkish Straits. And here is a map. I'm using the term Turkish Straits because this is also used essentially in foreign, in English bibliography. In Greece, we don't like to use this term. We prefer to call them, as also in the official wording of the treaties, we call them the Straits in general, and we refer to the Bosporus and the Dardanelles. Okay, so now the 1923 Lausanne Convention of the Straits was completely superseded in 1936 by the Montreux Convention. And as a result, all demilitarization restrictions regarding the above-mentioned islands were lifted. The Turkish Foreign Minister, Rüstü Aras, at the time remarked in Turkish Parliament, that the National Assembly of Turkey, that were also pleased that the provisions concerning Limnos and Samothrace Islands, which were demilitarized with the 1923 Lausanne Treaty, is now being voided with the Montreux Convention. So whatever we consider in our favor, we will consider the same for our friends. Now, it's important to note what the other powers believe about the Turkish claims. So in 1976, the policy planning staff of the Department of State, they investigated the issue and concluded that the Greek position is apparently right. Warren Christopher, which was at that time Deputy Secretary of State, confidentially telegrammed the US ambassador in Ankara in 1977, and he acknowledged also that the 1936 Montreux Convention superseded the 1923 Lausanne Straits Convention, which provided for the demilitarization of the Turkish Straits and the northernmost islands, Limnos and Samothrace Greek, Imbros, Tenedos, and the Rabbit Islands Turkish. Here is Christopher. And also the British experts at the Foreign Office arrived at the same conclusion in 1981. And their quote is that the Montreux Convention and its protocol are entirely silent about Samothrace and Limnos, but given the terms of the preamble to the convention, the natural inference is that none of Article 4 of the Straits Convention remains. And thus, they have lost their demilitarized status. And I would like also to point out that both the preamble and the protocol, they are also entirely silent, not only on Samothrace and Limnos, but on the two Turkish islands, Imbros and Tenedos. And also regarding the decision of six powers, the British experts concluded that the Turks seem to be on a weak legal ground. And the Treaty of Lausanne confirmed indeed the decision of the powers, but what the experts of the Foreign Office believe is that it is clear that this confirmation only went to the question of sovereignty and not demilitarization. The historical truth is that Greece and the Balkan Alliance won the First Balkan War against the Ottoman Empire in 1913, where the Greek Navy liberated the Eastern Aegean Islands. Therefore, Turkey did not have the authority to place any restrictions on the Greek sovereignty in the Aegean Islands. Again, Turkey was on the losing side of that war. And as the Foreign Office stated at the time, the principle that the fate of all the islands was to be decided by the six powers, according to Article 5 of the Treaty of London, was accepted definitely and unconditionally by the Turkish government. And this happened by three separate diplomatic acts during 1913. This is the demarche, the April demarche that the Sublime Porte accepted the terms of the great powers, the Article 5 of the Treaty of London, and also the relevant article in the Treaty of Athens, which again confirmed that the islands, the fate of the islands, are to be decided by the six powers. Now, the concept of Europe, or the six powers at the time, they did require that all the islands liberated by Greece during the First Balkan War had to be neutralized, but this is important, not demilitarized, neutralized under the collective guarantee of the powers. And this was at first derived by the British Admiralty for all the islands in the Aegean, months before the breaking of the First Balkan War. And I will also say that irrelevant of if these islands were to be handed back to Turkey, Greece, or Italy, because during the Italian-Turkish War in 1911-1912, the Italians also occupied the Dodecanese. So this was conceived independently of who would be the future owner of these islands. That these islands have to be neutralized under the collective guarantee of the powers. And this was also agreed by all the powers in December 12 in the second meeting of the Conference of the Ambassadors in London. And what the British wanted is to make sure that no great power would ever have a naval base in the Aegean, because the British were content with the status quo, where they controlled the area from the Suez Canal to the Straits, with a superior navy operating from the naval base in Malta. And what the British wanted also was to find the solution to kick the Italians out of the Dodecanese. And the proposed solution of neutralization was, at the time, the best that they could do to maintain the status quo. What is essential for the history of the period is that the conflicting interests of the power in 1914, after the signing of the Treaty of London, and Germany's refusal to take any coercive measures against Turkey, which never accepted Greek sovereignty on the islands mentioned in the Six Powers decision, forced the Greek government and Prime Minister Venizelos not to give his consent for the demilitarization of the islands without explicit guarantees from the powers regarding their peaceful possession by Greece. And also Turkey had to formally accept the decision rather than just acknowledging its receipt, which was her official reply. And this is exactly what the Greek foreign minister, straight, answered. You can find the complete text, it's written in French, it's the official reply of Greece to the powers. It's not, as the Turks say, that Greece accepted the decision unconditionally. And the rationale for Turkey's acts was that if Turkey had outright rejected the decision of the powers would be then obliged to enforce the decision on Turkey. And therefore, they were counseled by the Germans and the French to reply in an ambiguous way that they just they received the decision, but they don't accept it or they don't reject it. Now, especially immediately after the issuance of the decision of the six powers, Greece was forced into bilateral negotiations with Turkey, with the initiative of the Romanians. This is with General Coanda in March 1914, the Germans, and finally the British. And Venizelos at first was conciliatory as the Turks held the nuclear weapon in their hands, and this was the threat of expulsion of all Greeks from the Ottoman Empire, which at that time numbered more than 2 million people. So essentially, this decision was not immediately applied because Greece and Turkey entered into bilateral negotiations. In August 1914, the Turks had entered into an alliance with the Germans, and feeling strong, they demanded the return of Chios, Mytilene, Samos, and Limnos in Turkish sovereignty for islands that were exclusively populated by Greeks. In September 1914, the British formally declared to the Turks that they consider the Turkish fleet as an annex of the German fleet, and they would sink it if it sailed out of the Straits and into the Aegean. Therefore, the Greek Prime Minister Venizelos, with the Royal Navy effectively guaranteeing Greek sovereignty in the eastern Aegean Islands, ended all bilateral negotiations with the Turks. Now, the important point to remember is, did Greece acquire the de jure possession of these islands back then, or she had to wait until the Treaty of Lausanne? Venizelos had prepared for quite some time a royal decree for the annexation of the Eastern Aegean Islands into the Kingdom of Greece. And this would effectively mean that Greece will unilaterally enforce the decision of the six powers. Now, the Greek army had evacuated southern Albania, which was the basic and the main prerequisite for the decision for Greece to obtain Greek sovereignty over the islands. The first time that Venizelos tried to unilaterally apply the decision through the royal decree, the British learned about it, and again they forced Venizelos into negotiations with the Turks at Bucharest, and this happened in the summer of 1914, and afterwards the negotiations after the outbreak of the first of the First World War, they continued in Bucharest. Now, in September 1914, Venizelos, after the negotiations ended, was asked by the Turkish ambassador in Athens regarding his plans, and Venizelos informed the Sublime Porte of his decision, and this is critical, to not implement unilaterally the decision of the powers, because here's a photo of Venizelos. Venizelos was smart, and he did not want to return to Turkey the three Greek islands that were mentioned in the decision, because the decision said that Greece will acquire possession of 4 islands in her possession in the Aegean, and they meant that Greece will acquire possession of 4 islands, but not the Dodecanese Islands that would remain in Italian hands. But she was obliged to return to Turkey Imbros, Tenedos, and Castelloris. And also Venizelos did not want to accept any demilitarization restrictions on Greek sovereignty for all Eastern Aegean Islands, as he knew that this was essentially proposed and stipulated by Germany during the London Conference, because at first the Russians were interested only for the 4 islands at the mouth of the Dardanelles, and the Germans, as a compromise, they said, okay, we will accept Greek sovereignty over the islands, but the proposed neutralization has to extend to all the islands in the Aegean. On the other hand, the Turks believed, allied with the Germans, that they will win the war, and if they win the war, they were promised a better deal and from the Germans. So what is apparent is that both Greece and Turkey were content in September 1914 for different reasons with the de facto situation. And therefore, this decision was not implemented and was eventually settled. This is the historical truth. And this is why also the experts at the Foreign Office concluded that indeed Article 12 of the Lausanne Peace Treaty confirms the decision, but the confirmation applies only to sovereignty and not demilitarization. Now, I would like to end with a few points regarding the 1947 Paris Peace Treaty. And the official position of the Greek governments is that Turkey is not a signatory state to this treaty, and therefore this treaty does not create obligations for Turkey. This was apparent in March 1975, where Turkey issued an memoir and requested the US government and other signatories of Paris Treaty to make representations with the Greek government to have the Dodecanese Islands restored to demilitarized status as stipulated by the said treaty. And again, in June 1978, Turkey issued another aid memoir, where again they urged the United States as a signatory of the Peace Treaty of 1947 and as a country that places importance on peace in the region to bring the issue to the attention of the Greek government. So it's fairly apparent from the above actions of the Turkish government that during the 70s, the Turks did not believe that they could directly quote the Paris Peace Treaty to demand from Greece the demilitarization of the Dodecanese Islands, in stark contrast to what they do now with the NOTAMs, because Turkey is not a signatory of the treaty. Also, this Italian Peace Treaty, as it is called, mainly places demilitarization restrictions to the Italian armed forces and to specific Italian territories. And it's also important to note the demilitarization of the Dodecanese was proposed at first by the United States in September 1945 at London during the Council of Ministers. You can find, if you read the memorandum, because essentially the British had a very detailed memorandum for all the issues that were to be discussed during the conference. The US memorandum regarding the Dodecanese said that all the Dodecanese are to be returned to Greece under conditions of demilitarization. And Molotov and the Russians, the Soviets, did not have any memorandum, and they were eager to listen to what the British and the Americans would say. And then it's clear that Molotov at first had not thought about demilitarizing the islands. Now, Article 50, paragraph 4 states that in Sicily and Sardinia, Italy was prohibited from constructing any naval, military, and air force installations or fortifications. As you can see, there was a naval station in Singonella, which is located in eastern Sicily. This was established at first as a naval base in 1959, and today it's an essential base for NATO operations with more than 4,000 troops. Also, Article 49, paragraph 1, states that the Bunch of Islands shall be and shall remain demilitarized, the same wording as the wording for the Dodecanese. And I would like to point out that in the small island of Lampedusa, the Americans again established a US military base, like a listening post, in 1972. So, what I would like to say about the Dodechanese peace treaty is that there are many aspects of demilitarization that today are not enforced by the other countries. So why the United States and Italy, they can unilaterally not apply demilitarization, for example, for Lampedusa or Sicily, and Greece, why Greece has to uphold total and complete demilitarization for the Dodechanese. This is something that is not right, as the situation has radically changed from the time that this treaty was signed, and this treaty was signed during the Cold War. This is also the basic thoughts of the Greek foreign ministry. Okay, and now we go back to the NOTAMs, and the verdict is that Psara, Thasos, and Agios Evstratios, which were usually the usual suspects for the Turkish NOTAMs, and other smaller islands and islets in the Eastern Aegean, and under no treaty obligation regarding any demilitarization restrictions. Because during the Lausanne Conference in 1922, demilitarization restrictions were discussed explicitly only for 8 islands in the Aegean Sea. The 4 islands mentioned in Article 13 of the Lausanne Treaty, Chios, Mytilene, Samos, and Dikaria, and the 4 islands at the mouth of the Dardanelles mentioned in Article 4, Paragraph 3 of the Lausanne Straits Convention, Limnos and Samothrace, Greek, and Imbros and Tenedos, now Turkish. In 1936, the Montreux Convention superseded the 1923 Straits Convention. Therefore, today, Greece treaty obligations in the Eastern Aegean Islands regarding any demilitarization restrictions are confined to the following 4 islands, as I said before, the 4 islands that are mentioned in Article 13 of the Lausanne Treaty, Chios, Mytilene, Samos, and Dikaria. And the above-mentioned islands and their territory can clearly be included in any scenario, in contrast to the Turkish NOTAMs last concept, in any scenario of any military training or exercise, as nothing in the wording and spirit of Article 13 of the Lausanne Treaty states otherwise. And as Ismet Passa said at the conference, this proposed demilitarization was almost illusory. Therefore, the Turkish NOTAM issued in December 2023 is fundamentally wrong, both historically and legally, as all similar NOTAMs issued by Turkey in the past and will surely be issued again in the near future. Regarding the islands of the Dodechanese, all demilitarization restrictions today are de facto obsolete, as you saw clearly with what happened in Cingonella and Lampedusa. So it's clear that these restrictions of the Paris Peace Treaty from 1947 are de facto not enforced today, with the latter actions of the Italian and the US governments. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and I hope that I made clear some things. I will also be eager to read and answer to your comments below. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.